Good evening, YouTube. You've probably noticed a video doing the rounds recently called Help Me Fight by Sarita Yuki.
Good evening, everyone. Sarita Yuki coming at you from Cardiff once again.
Here to unite through common dreads!
I'm going to ask you for help, YouTube. I need your help. I want to do a collaboration video, and I need it to get massive. This is not for me. It's not a vanity exercise. This is literally to spread the word. If you've been on YouTube the last few hours, you might have seen videos on the subject of the latest UN vote. I won't play you my video. I'll play you this one instead, as this is the YouTuber who drew my attention to it.
Well, I've got some pretty bad news. Apparently, because of overwhelming majority votes from Africa and the Middle East, the UN will no longer defend people who are GLBT from being executed for that reason. The UN has had sexual orientation removed from the list of things that constitute an unfair execution, so killing people for their sexual orientation is now no longer considered internationally illegal. Link below. I'm sorry that I've just given you the worst fucking news that I've heard all year.
I'll leave a link in the blowjob bar to that video and to her channel. Subscribe to her because she's one of the good guys. This is your chance, YouTube. You may think that nothing can really be achieved by YouTube speaking out against this travesty of human rights from people who are supposed to defend it, but this needs to be spoken against. This cannot stand, and I have no intention of letting it stand. I haven't worked out the details yet. I don't know the logistics, but I do know that we need voices, and lots of them. I need big voices like Coughlin616, The Amazing Atheist, and Phil Helines, and I need small voices like me and other similarly bracketed subscriber-based YouTubers. If any video needs to go viral, this video that I want to do needs to go viral. This needs to be as pure a demonstration of democracy as you can get. This needs to be thousands of voices howling at the top of their lungs against this. This is religion, making and influencing laws. The day that we thought would never come is here, because of religion, and who cares which one? If you're gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, because of the pronouncements in books of fairy tales affecting a UN vote, you can now be executed for being gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender. And according to the UN, it's not enough of an excuse to make a pronouncement against it. Leave me a comment if you're interested, or if you think you can help in some way by drumming up support, or however, or even send me a PM. And even if you just want to wish us well, it is appreciated. Till the next time I clock 1,000 heads, and until the next time we unite through common dreads.
Fortunately, he's got his facts wrong. I can understand how the mistake happened, but in any case, I won't be helping him fight. And I'm going to explain why. I would ask you to listen through to all of the video before you react, and of course all the relevant links will be in the description. Now, Sarita's video follows on one from my friend Lolwat Holmes, which links to an article by the New Civil Rights Movement, which in turn links to an article from the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. I want to make it clear from the beginning that I'm all for LGBT rights. I was very pleased when I was at university to introduce an LGBT officer onto the executive of my students' union, and I of course deplore this decision that's been made. But it's not quite what it seems. You see, the article on the new civil rights movement says UN General Assembly votes to allow gays to be executed without cause. That's not quite the case for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it wasn't the UN General Assembly. It was the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly. Secondly, the General Assembly can't pass a binding resolution, and even if it had, people would ignore it. Thirdly, it didn't actually say that. The text as amended still said you shouldn't conduct extrajudicial killings. It was just removing a particular type of person from that list. I think it should have been in there, but I'm afraid the interpretation that's being put on this based on the text isn't right. Now, where does this confusion come from? Well, it's because it's confusion between the UN General Assembly and a committee of the General Assembly. Now, the Third Committee, and like the other committees, anybody, any state can turn up to vote. As you'll see from the voting records, most did. There are quite a few abstentions, however. But it's a recommendation to the General Assembly to pass a non-binding resolution. So, to be clear on that, this isn't a final decision. Now, it would be possible to mount a campaign to get the General Assembly to change its mind. And I think that campaign would be a waste of time. It would take a lot of effort, might not actually work, and would be dependent on getting a few countries who would probably rather be quiet on the issue, unfortunately, to turn up. And even if it was achieved, it would be a waste of effort, because it's the United Nations General Assembly. Nobody takes it seriously. People can, any state is a member, and it's one state, one vote. And unfortunately, the way the world is at the moment, that means the UN General Assembly can hardly be called a bastion of progressive politics. Indeed, we just have to look at the three main blocs who supported the amendment: the Organisation of the Islamic Conference, the African Group, and the Caribbean. In fact, the amendment was proposed by Benin on behalf of the African Group. The UN has a problem with human rights. That's why it had the UN Commission on Human Rights, which was then scrapped because it was such a complete joke, and replaced with the United Nations Human Rights Council. I guess the idea being that if you change the name, you wipe the shame. But it didn't work, because you've still got places like Saudi Arabia on the United Nations Human Rights Council. Unfortunately, the simple fact is the politics of the UN, the General Assembly, are a joke, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Rather than having some big multinational campaign to perhaps change a vote that doesn't matter anyway, it would be better if we actually tackled the problem. Because what we see in this vote by the Third Committee of the General Assembly is the symptom and not the problem. It's a symptom of the homophobia. And the way to challenge the homophobia, I'm afraid, isn't going to be through the UN. It's actually going to be changing hearts and minds on the ground in countries which at the moment are fairly backwards. So I would tend to say use it by all means as a recruiting tool, but use it to support an existing campaign, someone like Amnesty International, and not to start a new campaign to get the UNGA to do something. It's really not worth the effort. We can just look at the various resolutions that have been passed about Israel over the years. I forget when the first one was passed that called for Israel to withdraw from Gaza and the West Bank. We're waiting. So, that's that. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on the United Nations. As I said, the politics of the United Nations are pretty bloody awful, but it actually does do a lot of good. This is a list of the specialised agencies of the UN. The Food and Agriculture Organisation, the International Civil Aviation Organisation, International Fund for Agricultural Development, International Labour Organisation, International Maritime Organisation, International Monetary Fund, International Telecommunication Union, UNESCO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, Universal Postal Union, World Bank Group, World Health Organization, World Intellectual Property Organization, World Meteorological Organization, World Tourism Organization. So there's things it's doing which clearly are useful. Now I know some of those will be controversial, but remember, every time you post a letter internationally or you take a flight internationally, that's being made possible in some way by the UN system, by the agencies of the UN. And I also think it's got, quite frankly, one of the most impressive things that we've managed to do in the history of our species. The eradication of smallpox was largely done by the World Health Organization, an agency of the United Nations. And then you have various agencies of the General Assembly and so on. So, you know, the UN does do a lot of good. I would add the caveat, particularly having heard Ashraf Ghani speak this weekend in Lisbon, that the UN is sometimes uncoordinated. The UN itself admits this, and it's spoken about the need for a one UN approach, so that instead of lots of different organisations going there, UN organisations, and acting in an uncoordinated manner, there's actually some coordination on the ground. So, you know, the UN is not beyond criticism. I love the idea. I wish it worked better. But a lot of the problems the UN has are because, you know, in the politics of the GA, because of the membership of the General Assembly. And unfortunately, you've got a lot of people there who, quite frankly, are backwards. A lot of states represented there, which, as I said, are hardly bastions of liberal thought. And the way to change that isn't to try to ram something through them in the GA, which doesn't matter anyway, but to actually address the problems at source. And that's not going to happen overnight. In fact, it may not happen in our lifetime, but as JFK said, let us begin. I hope that people don't use this as an opportunity to try and change the UNGA vote. It'd be lovely if it happened, but I frankly feel that it's a waste of time. Use it as a recruiting tool by all means, but support an existing campaign that's actually doing things on the ground in the countries that voted against. A final thing before I finish. It can seem rather bleak looking at you know, what happened with this vote. I'm just trying to find the piece of paper I need, sorry. And, you know, and you've got all this drama about the UN saying it's okay to kill LGBT people, which is just not true. You know, I said, even if the misinterpretation were correct, it's a recommendation to the General Assembly to pass a non-binding resolution. But there are plenty of people in the UN, plenty of states, that actually voted the right way. And in particular, the states that originally put in this agenda item on extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions. Albania, Andorra, Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, Chile, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Ecuador, El Salvador, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Honduras, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Montenegro, Slovakia, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Macedonia, UK and Uruguay. Congratulations to them. I'm Landon Cole. I'll see you next time.